Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'd like to pay my homage to the Buddha and to all Buddhas of all times, and also to all of the noble and liberating Dhamma teachings, also to all the holy, noble saints and sages of the liberated Sangha, and all those who have realized the path for themselves and its fruits, and all those who have made such great efforts over time to transmit and pass down the Dhamma Vinaya, path of practice, of awakening and of realization to all of us over the centuries and now over the millennia, over vast time and space, especially those who sacrifice so much, even their lives on the dusty Silk Roads or by sea, to share and to transmit and pass down the Dhamma and path of practice to us here today. So mindful of this sense of connection, then it's the eve of the solstice, and it's also, we're coming up on the new moon, which according to the ancient Pāli-text chronicles is the lunar anniversary of the full ordination of Vicereine, often called Queen Anula or Anula Disa Teri, and a large number of women in Sri Lanka who heard the Dhamma from the Ashokan era missionary, the Emperor Ashoka's own son, Mahinda Thero, who came to teach in Sri Lanka. And then they opened the Dhamma eye and became stream enterers and stream winners on successive days, and then their hearts inclined also to entering into, fully entering into the Sangha, the monastic Sangha, which then was part of then bringing Mahinda Thero's sister, Ashoka's daughter, Sankhamita Teri, then by ship with great embassy of a large group of Bhikkhunis, and then also at their head, a southern branch sampling of the Bodhi tree at the roots of which the Buddha realized great awakening, so representing the Buddha himself at that time. And then also so many leading families in the arts and crafts and sciences of the time. So this is a great secular and also Dhamma gift from Ashoka then to the island of Sri Lanka, which has been, I think, an enormous part of the heritage then being preserved and spread from Sri Lanka, and then back to Sri Lanka, and now back to India itself and around the world. So we credit them and their efforts in that time with the early Buddhist teachings of the Pāli-text traditions, and also the monastic lineages, Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni Sangha, that still are alive and exist in our world today. So with these remembrances and reflections, then I also think about where we are now in contemporary times. And I'd like to say that the year 2022, or According to the southern Buddhist traditions, counting since the parinibbana of the Buddha, then 2565 in the Buddhist era. Different areas have their own methods of counting. But 2022 has been really a kind of watershed year for us in Buddhism. For the first time in we don't know how long, we now have Bhikkhunis or Bhikshunis again in all three great early Buddhist Vinaya-based monastic traditions, the Sāvakayāna or Srāvakayāna traditions. In the Pāli-text Mahāvihāravāsin Vinaya traditions, that is the Theravāda traditions of South and Southeast Asia. In the Dharmaguptaka Vinaya traditions of East Asia, and in the Mūlasarvāstivāda Vinaya traditions passed down in Himalayan Buddhism, with the ordination of more than 140 Bhikshunis in Bhutan this last June 2022. This is really monumental to see in our lifetimes. Venerable Lekshe, you have been an important part of the initiative to restore full Bhikkhuni or Bhikshuni ordination for women in Buddhism in traditions that lost or never established full Bhikkhuni or Bhikshuni higher ordination. Back since the founding of Sakyadhita International in Bodhgaya in 1987, now 35 years ago, in which you, together with our late great benefactor Ayya Khema, played such an important founding role. What does that look like to you now?
Well, I think we've made great strides, and many people have been working on many different levels and many different traditions around the world to try to make a breakthrough on this, to educate people about the history of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, to place the work of Bhikkhunis in the context of Buddhism as a whole. What have the roles of the nuns been over time? Many of these things were mysteries to us 35 years ago. When the first delegation came to Bodhgaya from Sri Lanka, many of them had never heard the word Bhikkhuni. But the moment they heard it, they really wanted to have it. They really wanted to restore it in Sri Lanka. So I think that has been the greatest success story in a sense. The restoration of the Bhikkhuni Sangha in Sri Lanka opened the door for full ordination for women in other Theravāda traditions. So that was very significant. The future looks very bright, I think, when we look at how many communities of Bhikkhunis have been established since then, both in Asia and here in North America as well. We look at the increase in numbers of Bhikkhunis throughout the world, and we look at the work that the Bhikkhunis have been doing. Increased acceptance amongst not only the lay Buddhist community, but also among the bhikkhus themselves. Gradually, the Bhikkhunis have proved their value and their sincerity, their commitment, and their abilities to help propagate Buddhist teachings throughout the world. And so I would say that the picture looks really great and that the future looks very bright, considering what we've done until now. Relative in the grand sweep of time, what's 35 years? It's just a drop in the bucket. And yet, when we look at the great progress that's been made in all the Buddhist traditions since then, to improve the status of women, opportunities for women to study the Buddhist teachings and to practice the Buddhist teachings, then I think we truly can rejoice and be grateful to everyone who's contributed to this monumental effort.
Well, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's certainly, you're certainly one of them. So I think just on behalf of our whole community here, I just want to express my deep gratitude and appreciation and joy to see the effects of the your tremendous efforts. And I want to say that not only on behalf of our Dhammadharini Bhikkhunis community here or our Theravāda Bhikkhuni Association of North America, but also the UTBSI, United Theravāda Bhikkhuni Sangha International, of which I'm a founding member and coordinator. And I'm a coordinator for, specifically, we have different roles, but specifically for Bhikkhuni History, Herstory and Heritage, as well as just initially, provisionally for North America and Europe. So I feel like, we're able to take one more step because of the ground, that is the causal conditions being there in place to be able to do so. And that comes from so much just effort. And you're an example of just like every single day, day after day, just, making the effort, and then the great shift, groundswell of change that then comes from that. Not only alone, of course, although I know in such positions sometimes it can seem lonely or feel lonely and one has to step out ahead. That can seem lonely, but all the other people who have joined together in so many ways, and even non-human beings may be there supporting and blessing us. And so I want to share the merits and blessings back with all of them, recognizing all of them, all the fortunate causes and conditions. As I was saying, I was a part of the founding of United Theravāda Bhikkhuni Sangha International a bit more than a year ago, with the support from Mahabodhi Society of India, in collaboration with some of the leading Bhikkhuni teachers and preceptors of the Theravada traditions around the world. At first, we were just active in offering programs online earlier during the pandemic. But when it looked like the pandemic situation was easing up a little bit a few months ago, UTBSI organized an international Bhikkhuni ordination in Bodhgaya this last November. Past international Bhikkhuni ordinations were held in Bodhgaya decade by decade, in 1998, in 2009, a bit more than 10 years later, in 2019, 10 years after that. This year, last month, was the first one to be held sooner than a decade later, in 2022, rather than in 2029. It was also larger than the last several such ordinations, due to a pandemic backlog of trained and prepared candidates. And it was held in conjunction with the opening of the first International Theravada Bhikkhuni Training Center in Bodhgaya, in a space offered by the Mahabodhi Society of India. Reading Buddhist Door Global articles about this the past several days, I've been interested to see the strong and encouraging impression this created, and also that in both articles, the writers have really connected the ordinations happening in Bhutan this year and this particular large International Theravada Bhikkhuni ordination in Bodhgaya. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing this news, and I'm very happy to hear that the Theravāda Bhikkhuni Sangha internationally is working together. I think that's been a strength of the movement, is that different sectors of the Buddhist community have been working together to make sure that we achieve gender equity in the Buddhist Sangha. And I think this is a strength of the women's work, that we've been able to work together harmoniously without competition and to support one another in achieving this goal, this important goal. The world is in such a mess. We need all the help that we can get. Buddhist women represent an enormous amount of human capital, not capital in the corporate capitalist sense of the word, but human resources, right? We have so much to offer. And to relegate us to the back door is in no one's interest. To bring Buddhist women up in terms of education, health, and visibility, confidence, practice communities, all of these things is to the benefit of all Buddhists everywhere, and especially to the future of the Buddha Dharma throughout the world. So I applaud all of these efforts. Let's continue to work together in harmony with mutual appreciation. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Anumodami. I'll just comment that for UTBSI, this has been a part of an essential or core aspect of the founding initiative. That is that coming together in harmony and working together in harmony, pooling our strengths, our resources, rather than pulling off in different directions, that this is, something greatly praised and recommended by the Buddha, number one. And number two, that if the Buddha was recommending it, that must be wise and wholesome and skillful and contribute to our liberation. So, that's the main founding point, is to see, okay, what does it look like if we come together and work in harmony? And so it's meant for international Theravāda Bhikkhuni leaders to come together in harmony, and then also harmony with the Bhikkhu Sangha, to really actively welcome in members of the Bhikkhu Sangha who are supportive, and to give a forum for their voices, their advice, and just to not only benefit ourselves from coming together, but to be a good example of coming together in this kind of way. And of course it's not always easy, because we have different opinions and different strengths and different perspectives, and so we're really learning how to bring those together in a way that's of mutual benefit. So it's a great training, and I'd say you mentioned that this is a strength of women, and I feel like, especially for Western women, not always. We may have different patterns, but it can be. It can be, and that's a good way to go. So working with, training, aiming for, and developing ourselves in that. And Sakyadhita has been so important in that as well. Now 35 years of Sakyadhita, amazingly, in our world. So I just want to say, yes, it can be, and yes, it's good to go that way, this way. Next, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention the first Theravāda Bhikkhuni ordination in Bangladesh this year, in November, last month. They are traditional Buddhists among the Bangladesh hill tribe people from back in the old days, among those Buddhists who survived at the peripheries during the centuries that Buddhism could no longer continue flourishing in its Indian homeland. You are a founder also of the Jamyang Foundation, dedicated to changing perceptions of women's potential, which is working among Himalayan Buddhists, particularly Buddhist women, working among traditional Buddhists, particularly Buddhist women in the Himalayas and in Bangladesh. I saw and was heartened to see that you went and visited the fledgling Bangladesh Bhikkhuni Sangha a few years ago, at a very important kind of make or break time for them. I know how much they appreciated this. They shared that with me, how moralized and encouraged they were. Would you speak about this?
Well, I've been working in Bangladesh for some years. I think it began one time when I brought some medicine to a Bangladeshi monk who was sick in the Burmese Vihar in Bodhgaya, and they invited me to go to Bangladesh. So I didn't get a chance for a few years, but after that, as soon as I could, I made a journey to Bangladesh. And at that time, it was a time of civil war. There was a lot of factionalism and a lot of strife between different ethnic groups. At that time, I made connections with both the hilly Buddhists and the plains Buddhists. You have the Barua Buddhists, and then you have the indigenous peoples who are also Buddhists. And
Chakma.
well, there are 10 tribes, and about 4 of them are Buddhists, Chakma, Marma, and so on. And so they together form less than 1% of the population of Bangladesh. And some are quite successful, and some are quite are just getting by. But they take great pride in maintaining their Buddhist cultural heritage. At one time, Bengal was completely Buddhist, right? And so they're very proud to be Buddhists, and it's not always easy. And so they have done their best to preserve Buddhism. There are many important artifacts and architectural treasures in Bangladesh. Probably if we uncovered all of these treasures, people would be just so impressed at what they have there. Of course, not all of it has been archived, but they're working on it. The Bangladeshi government is also trying to uncover some of these sites, Buddhist sites. And of course, in the Tibetan tradition, we talk about the great master Atisha, who was Bengali and was pivotal in the spread of Buddhism throughout Tibet and the Himalayan cultural region. So there are connections all the way around. But I found that there were very few nuns in Bangladesh. The women are very active, as usual, they're in supportive positions often, but they're very devout. But I found very few nuns. So I've taken many trips there and tried to meet as many Buddhist nuns as I could. Some are staying in the back of monks' temples practicing vipassana, and they're very sincere, and they work to help the bhikkhus, and they also, that way, they have a place and nutrition to continue their own vipassana practice. So then when I heard that these nuns in Chittagong had established a community, I was delighted. And that they were interested in becoming bhikkhunis. They were younger in age. They had more education. Many of them had meditation experience. So I really wanted to encourage them. And fortunately had the opportunity to visit them that year. And we also invited them to our Sakyadhita conferences. And they made contributions to the conferences, which was great, because most people have no idea that they're Buddhists in Bangladesh. Right? They never think of that. And yet the Buddhists of Bangladesh are very proud and very determined to maintain their tradition. So I think, again, what the women have to offer is very precious and represents great hope, because they're very dedicated. And so I wish them all blessings for their practice and their mastery of the Buddhist teachings and their service to the community. They've become beacons of hope to the Buddhist communities in Bangladesh. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share about that community.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Yes, sadhu, sadhu.
I was actually so delighted to see the images from the dual Bhikkhuni ordination that they had after the Vasa in November there. And the program was in conjunction with the Katina, offering of the robe of merit. And so they had a dual Sangha Katina as well afterwards. And the way that it was set up or laid out, I actually felt like I was seeing probably something closest to what this would have looked like much earlier in South Asian times. There was just something about it that was so, I don't know, like so deeply familiar, or but of course Buddhism in Thailand looks very much like Thai Buddhism, and Buddhism in Sri Lanka looks like Sri Lankan Buddhism, and just looking at those images, I just had this feeling that, like, this is what Indian subcontinent Buddhism looks like with the dual Sangha together. And it was just so brightening and inspiring and encouraging to me. And yeah, one of the unique treasures of this year now, amazingly. And I just want to appreciate your very timely support. Going there and just, being there and offering that encouragement and that care, and sometimes that makes all the difference. And it's such a great lesson. Yes?
Well, the beauty of loving kindness is that it spreads. It mutually infuses. When we practice loving kindness, we receive loving kindness, and then loving kindness expands, and it includes more and more people, and it embraces everyone, and then it's almost as if it foments. And so this is what we see in places like Bangladesh. I mean, when I first went, they had never seen a bhikkhuni. They didn't really know what to do with me, but they were so kind. And on top of it, I'm vegetarian, and they normally don't keep a vegetarian diet, but they were very happy to accommodate me. And they would find a special place for me in the gathering, in the Sanghadana, wherever we went. And I felt that they really tried their best and were very open-minded. They weren't ascribing anything, they weren't sort of promoting anything, they were accepting. And that was so beautiful. It laid a really nice groundwork for the advancement of the Bhikkhuni Sangha in Bangladesh. They heard the word Bhikkhuni, they saw a real life Bhikkhuni, and then gradually many of them were very supportive, very happy about it. Most, I think almost all, were very happy to see this move forward. Of course, there were those that were not as accepting. The nuns have had struggles to establish themselves in Bangladesh, but overall, the loving kindness of the Bhikkhunis for the lay community, and the loving kindness of the lay community toward the Bhikkhunis, and the loving kindness among Bhikkhunis themselves, I mean, it's just exploded and become stronger and stronger. So I think that's a good lesson for us all too. What is our motivation in doing all of this after all? Sometimes we've received critique when we try to advocate for full ordination for women, as if we are trying to gain something for ourselves, or we're trying to prove ourselves, we're trying to advance ourselves. And we've had to be very clear that this has nothing to do with our intentions. Our intentions are simply to help establish the Buddhist teachings in places where they're just getting started, or where they may have declined and are being reestablished, and to really to support those who can help with this. And so, on the contrary to gaining some sort of status or promotion for ourselves, in fact, we've taken a lot of risks over the years. It hasn't always been a popular platform. Gender equity will always have its detractors, but when they see the value for the traditions, all of the Buddhist traditions themselves, then it starts to click that this is going to work well for all of us. And there's not a competition, because this is what I got in the beginning from the very first Sakyadhita conference in Bodhgaya in 1987. I would have people slip me notes. Are you trying to compete with the monks? Oh my, I couldn't even imagine that someone could think that. And that was the farthest thing from our minds. And so now I think it's very clear to people that this is not what we're doing. There were even some who said, if the nuns get full ordination, then we monks will get less donations. They said this to me in person, and I felt so, touched, so astonished, but also it was a bit pathetic that they could think that they would get less. And what has happened through the recent decades is to show that by giving women equal opportunities to study and practice the Dhamma, in fact, everyone has benefited. There's a huge renaissance of Buddhism in almost all Buddhist countries. So it's actually worked to the benefit of all. And this is a beautiful thing, I think, that women have shown, that by advancing the cause of gender equity, we've actually advanced the cause of Buddhism throughout the world. If the Buddhist communities are lacking in terms of providing equity for their own members, then people will question this. They will doubt the value of Buddhism. Whereas if Buddhists show that men and women can work in harmony together, that's going to send a really positive message. And I'm very happy to see that this is what's happening throughout the world. So it's a win-win situation. Yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much for speaking to that. I know that it is still a concern for some. And I've been reflecting that some people say, with regards to Theravāda, that like Mahayana Buddhists cannot be a model for Theravāda. But there are lots of different kinds of Mahayana Buddhism and various Buddhist traditions, and those that do preserve Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni Sanghas, I think actually we can see in those places how Buddhism is really strengthened. And mostly in those places these days there's not a lack of support. Even when those who have the aspiration and dedication to become bhikkhunis are supported and nurtured and educated and trained, well trained to do so, they become such great assets to the whole tradition. And so that fear that if that dedicated laywoman who aspires to become a bhikkhuni is able to, then that there won't be abundant lay support, we really see that's not true. That actually the amount of support and the flourishing of the traditions is really, it actually seems to increase. And I want to ask my assistant here to look up for me. There's something that I've coined the Buddhist Prime Directive. I thought about it quite a bit, and I came up with this for the first international conference on Bhikkhuni ordination that was held in Toronto a few years back. And I want to see if we can find it again, because to my mind it's just like boiling down, like, what is Buddhism for? And I'll be interested if we can find it. You can Google my name, Tathālokā, and Buddhist Prime Directive, and see if you can find it. Because I think it really helps to speak to these doubts, these concerns, these issues, and just really like clarify everything and just ground us in the Buddha's intention and fundamentally, primarily what the Buddha Dhamma Sangha is for. And I was reflecting when you were talking about Bangladesh also, then I think one of the strengths of Sakyadhita is the Buddhist women across traditions, then really sharing loving kindness and compassion, understanding, appreciation, and mutual support for one another, and not, just staying within the narrow box of our tradition. And there were similar concerns there that might weaken traditions if there was such inter-traditional support. And I think what we've seen is also there too. Even for the Bhikkhu Sangha, that I know, maybe 30 years ago and 20 years ago, there were those who had concerns about the bhikkhus of different traditions, then, working together and discussing together and like that, and like they should be focusing on their own tradition, and then it's a loss to the tradition if they do that. But what we've really seen is absolutely not that. It's a growth, it's a gain. There's mutual learning that happens and support that happens that then comes back into and supports all of those traditions. So it's just another kind of related example. So, oh, okay, never mind then. That's okay. So I want to go on then, if you feel all right to go on to a slightly different topic, or if, for any of these questions or topics, if you feel like you'd like to come back to something again, like there's an afterthought about it, something that you'd like to share, please feel free to mention it and to go ahead and do that. Because this is a little bit of a shift in gears now, unless she's found it. Never mind then, that's okay. So I'd like to talk now about climate change. So climate change is such an enormous issue right now. One of the most important, if not the most important and defining issue of our times. From our friends and neighbors Tanisra and Ayya Santachita with P-A-E-A-N? P-A-N. Today, I'm quoting, "This year, fossil fuel emissions hit a record high. Scientists report that major tipping points, which would lead to runaway heating and spiral global heating out of human control, are being triggered sooner than expected." The climate book Drawdown lists various things that we, each and every one of us, can be doing, and ranks the impact that they make statistically. Jack Cornfield, our neighbor at Spirit Rock just down the road here, in one of his Monday night talks not long ago, held up this book, Drawdown, and pointed out that it says the top thing we can be doing to slow and reverse climate change is the education and empowerment of women and girls. I watched that live stream with Jack Monday night, and wow, that was powerful. A kind of awakening. I am happy to think that our small part in the global work to educate, empower, and uplift women and girls in Buddhism can be such a contribution. And the work of Jamyang Foundation and Sakyadhita. Your thoughts?
Well, I believe that these issues work hand in hand. They're all interrelated. The political, the religious, the economic, and the environmental issues are all very closely intertwined. So it's been shown that through the education of women, it has a very positive impact on all indicators in any nation. The UN found this out a long time ago. And so as we help to educate women further, we find that the benefits expand out, not just trickle down, but they expand out through the village, through the community, through the region, and throughout the country. So it's to everyone's benefit to educate women. Now in Buddhist societies, I think that this means we must especially educate the nuns, because in all Buddhist societies, the Sangha members are a sort of a symbol and a standard of moral behavior. And now we're talking environmental ethics. That's a moral issue. For wealthy countries to be consuming an undue amount of natural resources and to be exploiting the earth in a disproportionate degree, this is a moral issue. And so how are we going to change it? Everyone says environment, 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 but what are we actually doing on a day-to-day level? When we take 20-minute showers, when our bathrooms are full of plastic bottles, when we unnecessarily drive places that we could easily walk or take public transportation. These are uncomfortable issues, especially for people in developed countries, because, well, we're conditioned to like our comforts, and this is going to mean some changes. So what resources do we have for really making a change here? We very critically need to make changes, and fast. So here's where Buddhist women can be very beneficial to the community, to the society, to the economy, to the welfare of the world. So by educating Buddhist women, we then are creating a whole generation of teachers who then can go out into the community and to help promote some of these changes. And I've seen it happen just recently. When we started working up in Sanskar, there was very little education. Even public education was at a premium. And there was no Buddhist education for women. And many families didn't send the girls to school, even if there were schools, because they needed them in the home. So as we've established monasteries up in these remote areas and helped the little girls to get an education, and with the help of the Indian government, to provide education from the primary school level up, these young girls have developed, have blossomed into community activists. And I was just amazed that the nuns in Zangla now have won an award for their environmental preservation efforts and for their community development, you can say environmental protection and cultural preservation efforts. So this is remarkable. And they've even made videos, they've been on TV. And this was just something that was unimaginable 35 years ago when we began our work. We began Jamyang Foundation about the same time we founded Sakyadhita, because we realized that an international global movement, and remember this is the time before the internet, before the day of cell phones, we were writing paper and letters that often did not arrive. And so it was really unimaginable these kinds of changes could occur, and yet they have, and a really relatively fast pace. So this is how I think that because we as nuns have lots of time, we have no obligations to secular like activities. We don't have to go to birthday parties and weddings and all of that sort of thing. We have time. Our time's our own, actually, and if we expend it wisely, we can really be agents of change in the modern world. And this is a bit countercultural, because often we hear people dismiss nuns as if we'd somehow wasted our lives by what? I never could quite figure out why it was assumed that we were wasting our lives, when in fact I think that by dedicating our lives to the Buddha Dharma and to the welfare of humanity, we've actually used our lives to the fullest. And in this way, by taking up issues, I mean, everyone can't do everything. We can all do what we can. But since we speak to people, we speak at conferences, we speak at Dharma gatherings, we have helped women to find a voice. And in a way, the nuns take a kind of the role, a leadership role in these things. And of course, the lay people help educate us too, because keeping up with all of this, the statistics that you mentioned, it's not easy really to keep up with the science and all the political developments, what bills have passed, which ones have not passed, and what's the greatest challenge that we need to address immediately. So we all can work together in this regard as well. I think it's very exciting. And I think that it's very obvious that Buddhist women can play an enormous role here in saving the planet. So let's do it. Let's come together and really take this seriously. And I thank you for raising this.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. As you said, words shining in my mind, we can all do what we can.
Yes.
So I think what I had drafted, tentative proposal of Buddhist Prime Directive, has been found. Perhaps, let's see. And so this is just to kind of jump back a little bit. So I might have to change my glasses for this, but let's see. No. well, this is speaking to it anyway. Right, this is from the article Re-arising of Bhikkhuni Sangha Katina, which I was trying to prepare. I had begun to draft and made significant progress in drafting for the Sakyadhita newsletter a couple of years ago. As yet unpublished. But it's still valid. Nobody's written about it yet as far as I know. Maybe someday. They're always, this is the thing with community though, not staying alone, but with community, then there are always the various things of the community that are arising and calling for attention. So here, what did I said about this? In terms of the loss of benefits in Buddhism and in the world, Buddhism's capability to fulfill its prime directive through offering the very best and most conducive opportunities and superstructure of support for awakening, full liberation, and empowered dispensation of the teaching to all of humanity has been severely limited by this. I think I'm talking about the loss or lapse of the fourfold community in Buddhism and of Bhikkhuni ordination here. So I'm saying with the revival of full Bhikkhuni Upasampada ordination in Theravāda Buddhism witnessed in the last 3 decades, fortunately this has begun to change at a time when this could not be more needed and more appropriate. So, thank you very much. We may find it again, and perhaps someday we'll publish that almost entirely complete article that was prepared for the Sakyadhita newsletter.
Thank you. The
that was
deadline
just
is
a brief
coming up.
preview and excerpt from it. So it's very close. It's just, my punctiliousness, like wanting to have a particular date, right? Wanting to get a footnote. I would like to then jump back to what we have next here. And this is near the end of the things that I had thought to ask about and to invite your thoughts and words about. So then I don't know how you and others will be feeling, but in case we come up to this, if you feel energetic and if there's time, I don't know about that, then others might have had other questions rising to mind, and if not this time, maybe there would be another time. We hope, but we respect also the time that you had said was the time that you had for being here. So I'm going to come back to what we have here. We received a news flash from Sakyadhita International just very recently about Sakyadhita Hawaii launching a new website. And I've noticed with interest the Laia.
Yes.
I used to live on Laia Point on the island of Oahu as a kid, and so I was so interested to see. I've noticed with interest the Laia Peace Center quietly emerging in Hawaii during these pandemic years. You've mentioned permaculture principles, volunteer opportunities. We often see people here interested in intentional living and meaningful volunteer opportunities. And our local permaculture design wizards offered some great design ideas for a water reclamation meditation garden right here on this property that we plan to be exploring more this coming spring, 2023, after our Dhammadharini annual winter retreat, which is coming up very soon. Please tell us something about the Laia Peace Center project.
Okay, thank you. This project began as a dream, as did Sakyadhita, as did Jamyang Foundation. It begins with a dream, and then we work to accomplish the dream. So it happened that a Catholic nun friend and I had a dream to create a peace center in Hawaii, and some land became available, and I was able to get 5 acres of land thanks to my mother's bequest. My dear Southern Baptist mother, may she rest in peace. And then I donated it to Sakyadhita Hawaii, and Sakyadhita Hawaii has developed through many stages. We brought His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Hawaii in 1994, and we've been, establishing meditation meetings, Dharma study groups, and many different activities over the years. But this land I could not do too much with because I was teaching in San Diego and going back and forth to India with so many responsibilities. But the pandemic actually came to be a blessing in disguise because I was able to spend the last 3 years mostly in Hawaii and to help develop the land. So it's about creating world peace and restoring the land. And in Hawaii, the land is extremely important. I mean, the indigenous people are very aware of the importance of the Aina and of caring for the Aina. And this affects all of us. Of course, this is true throughout the world, and all indigenous peoples respect the land and try to nurture the land. So this is not unusual. It was normal for human beings at one time. The exploitation factor has just stepped up in the last few centuries. So that's what leads us to the current existential environmental crisis. And so this land gives us an opportunity to do many programs, and I'm very happy that volunteers come up. It's important for city people to get their hands dirty and to feel the joy that comes from restoring the land. Like Leanne came over and she's digging out California grass, and people come up for a day or a weekend or whatever time they can spare. And then we also encourage the school groups, the school children to come up, and they discover bugs, and they discover, how papayas grow. They watch them grow, and it's just, it's full of wonder because the earth is full of bounty, and it's a beautiful blessing to us all, and it's also a necessity, right? So the pandemic showed that our food sources are very precarious. In Hawaii, we grow only 15% of our food. And if the ships do not ply to the mainland and New Zealand and so forth, we have no food. So people began growing. Even they only had small plots, but they started growing their own food. I mean, you can hardly buy seeds because they bought them all out. And of course, we're blessed with lots of water, and that's great. Yeah, it's a big help. So now people have started growing. I just planted 100 papaya trees, and now they're ripe. And we just go out, anyone who comes to the land can just go pick their lunch, their breakfast, It's so simple because of the richness of the earth, the bounty of the earth. So we're planting also Hawaiian indigenous trees like Hawaiian mulberry. They used to make their tapa cloth from mulberry, and they couldn't find enough mulberry trees. I said, we've got land, we can grow mulberry. So we planted mulberry trees. And then, ulu. Ulu means breadfruit. Breadfruit is, a big starchy vegetable that it grows very easily in Hawaii. And the Hawaiians would always plant one ulu tree for each child. That's to ensure that the children have enough to eat in perpetuity, right? And my brother did this for his children. He planted one ulu tree for each child. And so in these ways, we're learning about the earth. We're encouraging indigenous knowledge. We're encouraging people to appreciate the earth and to grow their own food. And then we would truly be independent, right? So the supply chain issues, you can just subvert the whole economic system by growing your own. Nobody can, if they want it, You just share it. And that's what we do in Hawaii. I started out by planting, the usual suspects, mango, avocado, guava, and lychee and so forth. But after we got in about 25 trees, then people just started bringing things. Every day people arrive with more saplings, such like the Bodhi sapling. Now we have 9 Bodhi trees.
Oh.
We planted the first one about...
Bodhi forest.
Oh, yes.
Bodhi forest.
And they grow on their own. And at our first Bodhi tree planting at Laie Peace Center, we had prayers in 8 languages, 8 different religions. And this is how we do religion in Hawaii. We all get along together. I mean, we try to learn and appreciate each other's traditions. And we all go. They'll invite us all. A community center has had, a bunch of suicides. So they invite us all. They invite the Hawaiians, they invite the Christians, they invite the Buddhists, they invite whoever is available. And we all go and pray together. And when we have community gatherings, people bring food, all their different foods, so many varieties. And then we all pray together around the food. It's normal. So I think it's a very beautiful tradition. And I'm sure lots of people in California do the same. But so in this way, it's good for humans, it's good for animals. We learn to appreciate the bugs. Bugs are sentient beings also, right? Yes. And they're the ones who help to dig holes in the land and make it more fertile. And so altogether, it's just been wonderful. It just enriches your heart and brings people together. So this is our experience, and you're all welcome to come and visit us.
Anumodami. Thank you very much. We've actually thought that it would be wonderful to have a Dhammadharini branch in Hawaii to be able to live like the very simple traditional Buddhist monastic style, because of not needing such heavy buildings and not needing so many warm clothes and all these kinds of things. But you mentioned Lian, and I wonder if you would like to come up just for a moment to say hello, if you would mind to introduce your pilgrimage companion very briefly. Would that be all right? Yes. Just briefly to just come and take a peek and say hello? Very, very, very briefly. Yes, we have an additional mic here that we can pass across there. You might have to come in just a little bit to be able to come onto the camera, or come forward a little bit, perhaps. There we go. Hello, everyone. Say greetings and welcome to Venerable Lekshe La's pilgrimage companion, Lian, who I understand is also been really active with Sakyadhita International and Jamyang Foundation for a while now. And just briefly, if you'd like to just say hello, or if Venerable Lekshe would like to introduce you for a moment.
Hi, my name is Lin Bui. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I've been known Venerable Lekshe since 2008. We've gone back in San Diego, and I now reside here in the Bay Area.
Oh.
Yes. And we met when we volunteer at the prison.
I just want to say Anumodana, because I saw then when I was looking at Venerable Lekshe's pictures, then I saw a number of them, even one that we really liked of you, then was posted by Lian. And then I saw that she was serving as the treasurer of Jamyang Foundation and of Sakyadhita International. So I just want to say on behalf of our whole community, Anumodana, and thank you very much for your great service and support, and also for bringing Venerable Lekshe to us today in your mini pilgrimage together. So Anumodana is the Buddhist way of saying thank you, but it's not thank you like with debt or anything like that. It's just expressing our deep joy and appreciation and gladness for knowing about what you're doing, your kusala kammas.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and a joy and a blessing as well. I would not be here who I am as today without Venerable Lekshe Tsomo. She brought the light into my life, transformed me, and I believe in giving and serving and her as well. And in making sure that we continue our work and helping support the communities and women's and monastic to achieve our goal.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well, I know she's done that for a lot of people, and also her ability to do that is also thanks to people like you and the support and the infrastructure and all of these things that makes it possible to do that together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, I just want to say what I have in closing here. If it seems like that's all right, if it would be a good time for that. So here in the northern hemisphere, it is winter. So for us, it's the winter solstice. For others, it's the summer solstice. But we're coming up on the solstice, and it's the time of year that people make New Year's resolutions. Venerable Lekshe, you're coming up now on 80. Not quite yet. You've been in monastic life for half of those years, at least. I think at least 40 years, and have lived such an enormously rich and dedicated life. From California surfer girl Patricia Zen, riding the waves, to studying ancient Buddhist philosophy in the Himalayas, entering monastic life, to leading up the world's largest international Buddhist women's association, and now to founding a lovely rural peace garden on the island of Oahu. What are your resolutions and dedications now?
Well, that's a big assignment. But of course, we want to bring the Buddhist teachings to the world and to work for the welfare of all sentient beings in whatever way the sentient beings need them. Sometimes it may be in unexpected ways, sometimes working on the streets or working in the prisons or working in some areas that people would find unexpected. But whatever way we can help, and each of us has different qualities and different talents and different time commitments. So we each have to work in our own ways to do the best we can to try to benefit the world. So as an old Berkeley activist from the 60s, this is always my dream. Yes, we got to save the world. It's obvious, right? How are we going to do that? So each one of us has our own special ways of giving and contributing to the welfare of the world. So I would encourage each one of us to go deep inside every day. In the Tibetan tradition, we start every action with checking our motivation. Why are we doing this? Why are we reading this book? Why are we attending this retreat? Why are we giving this donation? What is our motivation? Check up. Make sure that our motivation is as pure as possible. If it's tainted with the thought of gaining something for ourselves, some recognition or some benefit down the line, then it's tainted. It's not pure. So gradually we try to purify our motivation. And after we do the action with as much mindfulness as we can, then we dedicate the merit or share the merit with all sentient beings throughout space and time. All, even our enemies, even those that, we think are going on the wrong path. We want to share merit with them, maybe especially, right? So this is, I think, is important to remember. I would hope to aspire to help as many sentient beings as possible. And when we look at the world, the ones who need it are usually the ones who are the most disadvantaged. So we find a lot of Buddhist programs today are geared toward the elites, the wealthy. Well, that's good. That some of them are, really will benefit, and that's important. But we should not neglect those who are on the streets, those who are in the prisons, those who are suffering in many different ways. Those who are ill, those who are dying, those who are counseling those who are in need. The children. We really need to bring loving kindness to the children in whatever ways we can. And it can be simple ways, but let's get creative here. We have the tradition. The tradition is fantastic, right? We all know that. How do we translate that tradition authentically into the modern world among different kinds of people? This, I think, we should take as a challenge for the coming year, to find creative ways. Usually monks and nuns don't sing or dance, but we might encourage people to use the arts to bring the Dharma to new audiences who otherwise might not be interested. If we ram it down their throats in a very conservative, way, they may just go the other direction. They might run away. But if we can think of some new ways, some attractive ways through simple songs, through movement, this can be a vehicle for bringing the Dharma to new audiences. This, I think, is important. Oh, there's so much to say. And again, this idea of checking our motivation before we begin any action. Try to see if we can generate a very pure motivation for our practice. Then do the practice with as much mindfulness as we can. And then at the end, to share the merit with all sentient beings. In the Tibetan tradition, they say, rejoicing in the merit. Rejoicing in the merit.
That's anumodana.
Of course, exactly. It can be translated in different ways, right? So, sharing the merit with all sentient beings. And this is naturally accumulates. It accumulates for us on our path to liberation. It also accumulates goodness in the world for all of us. So thank you very much for participating, for supporting this community, for all of you who are living here, for all your good work in benefiting the community. And may you all be strong and healthy in the coming year.
Sadhu, 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 anumodama. So we'd like to chant verses of dedication together. Would you
May
mind
I make a little offering here?
Yes, and just a moment, I would like to actually ask you, after our chanting these dedication verses together, may we invite you to also share a brief blessing or dedication?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course. Hear it.
Yes.
Yes.
So maybe hand to Venerable Kachayana, but remember not to hold it too close.
May I please offer these propaganda materials and a small donation
sadhu. Certainly.
to your wonderful, wonderful
Thank
community.
you very much. Thank you very much.
This one is in an envelope, so it's a cash donation. Okay, please. You may come and receive.
All the things that are not cash, our monastics here can, not everything, but mostly it's not cash we can receive, and we very much appreciate Anagarika Pimaratana and also the other dedicated members of our lay community, our support foundation, our friends who make it possible to live with the traditional monastic discipline. So Seminary Tavira is helping out to receive this offering, and I just want to appreciate this and share. This is Jamyang Foundation here, propaganda materials, as Venerable Lekshe said, which I'm happy to share with everyone who is here. Thank you very much for that. And
there's a few more propaganda materials.
Okay. Thank you. We'll happily receive those. And then thank you very much for joining us and visiting our Dhammadharini monastic community on your mini pilgrimage. It's ever so much appreciated. And now I would like to invite our monastic community here to join in chanting some brief verses of dedication and sharing of merits. Ayya Suvijana, if she would like, coming back can join us just in chanting the verses of sharing and aspiration. We'll invite Samanari Tavira to
And the
receive
envelope can go
on
to
your behalf. Anumodami. And then we'll ask Venerable Lekshe also if she would like to share any chant or recitation of dedication. We want to especially remember today, early in the morning today, there was a 6-point-something earthquake in the county, Humboldt County, just to the north of us, and we understand a lot of our friends up there without power or displaced and have had their situations gravely disrupted with the earthquake today. So we want to send thoughts of blessing and dedication and care, sharing of blessings and metta to them in this difficult time. And also we're mindful of there being so many difficulties in so many places near and far for various reasons. So we want to include all of humanity under stress and difficulty, and also all living beings in this sharing of blessings and merits. So I'd now like to invite our monastic community to join in chanting the verses of sharing and aspiration together, and then invite Venerable Lekshe, and that will complete this time of our conversation together. So Venerable Bhikkhuni Suvijana Terry has just returned to us, so we'll welcome her to join in the chanting of the verses of sharing and aspiration, or dedication verses together. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from our practice, may our spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, our mothers, our fathers, and our relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest devas and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of our lives. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from our practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until we realize Nibbanam in every kind of birth. May we have upright minds, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken our resolve. The Buddha is our excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is our noble Lord. The Sangha is our supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. Inviting you.
Gewadi nyududa lama sangye tupgyune Dowa chikyang malupa keiki sala gupar sho. By virtue of the merit that we have accumulated, may we achieve the state of perfect awakening in order to liberate all living beings from suffering, leaving not one behind.
Sadhu, 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 anumodama. Yes, bravo, bravo, bravo. Or as Ajahn Brahm says, awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yes. Oh.